So welcome to the call, Andy. I mean, we haven't spoken, I've interviewed loads of times, but we haven't spoken about you for quite a long time, have we? We do calls together about what's going on in the world, but it's been a
I'm
long
quite
time.
happy with that. Yeah, I do this out of protest, but I'm doing it for you.
I know, and I deeply appreciate it. And so, tell for the benefit of people who don't know, I mean, I've got a couple of interviews with you on my YouTube channel already, so do go and look those up, people, and I'll put links in the description below. But for people who don't know you, can you give us a bit of an overview? And I really want to focus on the entrepreneurial side of your psychology, if you like.
Okie dokie. If I can, yeah, never really fitted in that well at school. Was always trying to make money, selling all sorts of things, from smoke bombs, stink bombs, running a lottery, hiring out illicit magazines, shall we say?
Oh, were you?
Yes, all sorts of. My mate's dad had a big stack of those, and so yes, that was a multiple visits to the headmaster's office, nearly kicked out of the school. Yeah, sort of didn't really gel with the school education too much. I sort of fitted in because my dad was a teacher, and so he more or less said, "Look, you got to fit in. You got to not make me look bad." So I put the effort in there for him and that sort of thing. But yeah, it was just a few years, and I knew how good school life was. And I think I was the only person at school going, I'd rather be staying at school than going out into the real world. It's far easier.
I didn't know that about you. You've never said that before. That you were trying to make more money as a very young person. What prompted that? Was it just the fun of the thrill of the chase, or was it that you were not well off, or what do you think
Yeah,
prompted?
I didn't. I came from a normal household. We weren't poor, but we weren't rich, and it was just, I saw opportunity to make money, and so I kept taking it, and kept being told I wasn't allowed to do that, and I wasn't supposed to do these things, and couldn't I just go back to studying the lessons I was supposed to do because I was quite good at maths and that sort of thing. So maths and history were two of my favourite subjects. So I was just bit of a fish out of water, and I couldn't understand why other people weren't doing exactly the same sort of thing as me.
The history's interesting because I've got a theory developing on history for later on. So you enjoyed it. You didn't really fit in, but you were able to. You've got a very sharp wit, so I imagine that made you quite popular at school. So you left school with a pot of capital that you'd accumulated, or did you spend it as fast as you earned
No,
it?
no, I had saved some money because I was a paper round butcher's boy as well, sort of thing. So I'd take up odd jobs, do whatever I could to make money, clean cars, cut grass occasionally. But yeah, it was not a lot of money. And my I wanted to go straight into business, and my mum said to me, "No, you can't do that. You've got to go and learn a trade." So, what do I mean, learn a trade? She says, "Well, when you go and mess it up in business, you can always fall back on your trade." And it was like, it actually sounded logical at the time. So she got me into. I was particularly good at woodwork, so she got me to go and get an apprenticeship as a cabinet maker, which I thoroughly enjoyed, but was never going to get me rich. So that was a pretty much a non-starter.
And you had a bit of a pivotal moment, didn't you, with another relative, I
Yeah, I was very
believe.
lucky. At the age of 13, I think I was on holiday at my uncle's home down in the New Forest, and he was a great uncle. He wasn't actually my uncle, and he'd done a lot of things, but he was a futures oil broker, and
Oh
he worked for
wow.
Shell, and he'd made a lot of money, multi-millionaire, and this was in the 70s. And he called me to one side one day, and he said to me and my brother, he asked us a series of questions. My brother answered them one way, and I answered them another, and he
Oh,
promptly gave my
intriguing.
brother. Yeah, well, he gave my brother a fiver and told him to go and buy himself a nice lolly or something. And I was a bit gutted because a fiver was a heck of a lot of money at the time. He said, "I'm going to give you something much more valuable. I'm going to tell you your future." He says, "You've got almost everything you need to be an entrepreneur, run businesses, manage people, and that sort of thing. But you've got a few things missing. Don't worry. Uh, People will come to you throughout your life that can give you the bits that you're missing, and just learn to watch out for them. They'll have a sign on them. You'll know them when you see them." And sure enough, I did.
Amazing. That is such an incredible thing looking back, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. So you went off to your apprenticeships, and I think there were a series of them, weren't there? Because
Yeah,
you
I did multiple different, worked at multiple different companies, finished a full 3-year apprenticeship at one, went straight into another company, and I was on piecework there. At one stage, There was 50 odd people in the factory, and I was producing 49% of the factory's output because I
Wow.
was quite good at turning it into a trade, turning out the work. Then I went into double glazing, worked for, I don't know, 21 different firms, learning that. Then set up my own double glazing business with a good friend. About 3 years, I think I was 21 at the time. No, I might have been 23. I might have been 23. Yeah, I was 23 at the time, I think it was. We set up our
Very
first.
young to set up your own manufacturing company, because that's a big
No,
investment.
we didn't manufacture until, oh,
Okay.
when was that? About, I must have been nearly 30 when we started manufacturing.
And did your friend who you went into business with have a sign on him?
Yep, absolutely. I met him in the martial arts, and I was teaching this girl how to do some kicks, and a door opened behind me, and I swung round, and I just had a funny feeling I was supposed to know this guy, and that was it.
It's like a jolt of energy, isn't it, when you
Yeah,
see
it is.
people
Yeah,
like that? It's
yeah, it
amazing.
is. I mean, I've learned to tune into it now, in and I now use it as part of my process. And you know, people have a sign on their heads, and it means that you're able to avoid a lot of mistakes. You know, don't get me wrong. There's times when I've had the feeling and not bothered to follow it, and I've paid the price.
Okay, so you go into business, and you've told me so many funny stories about the business you were in, and things that went wrong there. But
Yeah.
but from an entrepreneurial point of view, did you know that there were different kinds of businesses you could have gone into, business models you could have chosen, or did you just go with what fell at your feet kind of thing, the first idea that came at you, or was
Yeah.
there a plan?
Oh no, it was the plan was to get rich. That was the plan. It just so happened that I was particularly good with windows, doors, conservatories, and that sort of thing, building works. And so we thought, my friend was one of the world's best salesmen, in my opinion. And so we had most of what was needed to run a business. We didn't know how to add up, and we weren't particularly good on that side of things, but we were extremely energetic, even though I say it myself, a little bit clever, and we had we had a lot of drive, and we both wanted to get rich, and we thought that business was the way to do it. I don't know. We went from nothing to employing 100, 150 people in about 8 or 9 years, and we had about 6 or 7 companies at the time, and it was hell on earth, to be frank. But we did all right. You know, it got us what we wanted in life at that stage, and then all of a sudden one day I sat there and I went, "This isn't getting us rich." No, to tell a lie, it was my business mentor. I was coming up with yet another idea about we would create another production line and make money that way. And my business mentor said to me, he says, "All your ideas are good, Andy." He says, "They all lack one thing, though. They lack money." And I went, "Oh, right." And I sat there and I thought, well, I'll make
Did
some
he need
money then.
money to put into the idea, or money,
Yes.
or money out at the other end of the idea?
Capital investment at the start. That was always our problem. We were always over trading. You know, it was a non-stop thing. We went from literally nothing to a turnover of around 7 or 8 million, and we had I think we gave out credit of something like 70 days, and we had credit ourselves of about 8.25 hours, I think it was. So in other words, we were so over trading, it was just ridiculous. And so we were just going, it was hell. It was absolute hell. It was great fun, but it was hell as well.
Yeah. You
A
said
lot.
something very interesting earlier there about your business mentor. How did you find them? Was it an accident? Because I know a lot of people want a mentor but don't know how to go about finding one. How did you find yours, or did he find?
Well, he found out where he didn't. He owed somebody a favour, and the person he owed a favour said, "There's 2 lads in Worthing. They're really good people, but they lack business nous. So you owe me a favour. I want you to go down there and help them." And so he came down to see us, and of course we were close to having to liquidate the business because we were overtrading beyond belief. And he said, "Right, I'm going to help you." He says, "You're very good. You can buy, you can sell, but you can't add up. I'm going to teach you how to add up." And I was very nervous about this guy, and I thought,
But hang on, you'd been good at maths at school. What did he mean when he said that? He obviously didn't mean
yeah,
to add up.
there's maths and there's maths and there's accounting, and they're two totally different things. And when you understand how cash flow works, how a balance sheet works, it changes things, because it's about the movement of money around the balance sheet is essential to know about when you're in business, in my opinion. That way, I wouldn't even consider starting anything now like we did in the old days. I would just, it was,
Have a
without
great
having,
idea, get it
yeah,
started.
I'd have the capital, then I'd have another 50% on top of the capital as a minimum, sitting there in the bank, ready to go day one. I wouldn't ever think about trying to do it any other way. But I think when you're young and you're stupid, I had a business expert come and see us once, and we were sitting in the factory, and we had this, fantastic production line that we built. And this business expert's going, "You're so brave." I said, "You know far more about business than I do. Why aren't you doing this?" He says, "Exactly. I know far more about business, and I know how impossible it is what you're doing."
Yeah.
He says, "Because you're ignorant of it, you're able to just go and do it."
Yeah.
And this is an important part of psychology. You have to know your limitations. We didn't know our limitations. And so, of course, that works very positively at times, but it can also work very negatively as well. So we got to experience the fun of it when we had boundless amounts of energy and drive. And in our youth, when you can make lots and lots of mistakes, and they're not really costly, are they? Because you've got lots of time to sort things out. When you're in your 20s, you're thinking, "God, I want to be retired when I'm 30," sort of thing. And of course, it's ridiculous to think that. But when you're in your 20s, that's one of those thoughts a lot of people have.
It seems like you have forever. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so with your business mentor then, did you enter any sort of formal arrangement with him, or was it just, we'll have lunch once a month and I enjoy hanging out with you guys, and that's how it worked?
Yeah, we paid him. We paid him for each day he came to see us, but it was a handshake. There was, the best business arrangements I've had have always been handshakes, because people can choose to leave whenever they want. But most people in business would hate that sort of relationship. I love it, because it's people working on a handshake. I find them much more trustworthy.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that. The manager of Dire Straits always worked on a handshake as well. Although we now know what we know about the music industry, it might not be a true story. But okay, so moving on. So what you had that epiphany that you weren't making any money and you weren't going to get rich with this. What happened then?
Well, I left. We finished lunch. We had a lovely lunch. I went away, and my partner says, "Yeah, we'll have to just curtail our thoughts on these new ideas of yours and that sort of thing." I said, "No, I'll go and figure out how to make us some money." It just so happened that the Sunday Times Rich List came out that week, and so I went up down the road, bought it, came up, and started looking through the Rich List. And I was amazed at, I can't remember the percentage, but it was a huge percentage of the people in the Sunday Times Rich List either made or retained their wealth in property. And so I then looked at what I'd got in property. And at the time, I'd kept the house I'd moved out of, and I'd moved into a bigger house. And I looked at what I'd made from property, and I thought, wow, I've made a fair bit of money from property. It's not just made, but retained a fair bit of money as well. And then I looked at the tax side of things, and I thought, this is quite advantageous tax-wise. And then I thought, right, okay, well, what do I need to do? Never read a self-help book or anything like that. But I thought, what do I need to do to figure out if there's an angle, if there's a way of making money on this? So I went away and started doing researching, and then the maths came into play. And I was able to sit back and look at all the property market values, and I tracked back, and my dad bought his house in 1971, and it was,
that one, isn't it?
yeah, and it was he paid off the mortgage. Anyway, cleared it in 96, and at the time he could have paid off his mortgage with the cash he had in two different accounts, and so it was with either of those accounts to pay off the mortgage. And I thought, wow, so all that time he struggled on his capital and interest repayment throughout the time. And I thought, well, he really struggled. And I looked at how much mortgage he paid, and and that sort of thing over the time, and how much his interests were, and how much we had to curtail our life to pay his mortgage off, and that sort of thing. And I thought, this is ridiculous. The inflation is making property investment, basically, all you have to do is cash flow it. And as long as you cash flow it,
you're going to have to slow down a bit for the benefit of me and our watchers. Okay. So
right, okay.
Let me just orientate myself. So when was this? When were you looking at property in this way?
Late part of 2001, early part of 2002. I spent about 8 weeks researching it, but I put this spreadsheet together, and I worked out that because of the way inflation worked, that property doubled every 6.74 years or whatever it was. And I thought, well, this is
And
great.
you work that out of yourself, because it says it quite, and we'll come on to books in a minute, but it says it in quite a lot of property investment books, but you hadn't read any, and I know that because when I met you in 2003, I think it was.
Yeah, I think it was 2003 we met.
Yeah,
No, tell a lie, it was 2004.
Yeah, 2004, that's
Yeah,
right.
because I met your sister in 2003 and she introduced you to us in 2004.
Yeah. And so I knew that you hadn't read any books, but so you literally worked it out. I mean, most people don't even know what inflation is in those days. So, we know what it is a bit more now, but most ordinary people don't. But
People don't understand is that
there was a thing called inflation, and that was what was causing property prices to rise constantly.
well, I always looked at it that if inflation was running at 5% and I was getting 2% interest in the bank, I was losing money. And so even though I couldn't see it, that I was losing the value of the purchasing value of my money.
Wow.
And so I looked at it and thought, if I can borrow money at, let's say, 5%, and the house appreciates at 11%, then all the money I'm borrowing, I'm making 6% on whatever I borrow. I thought, well, that's pretty good. So now it's a case of, well, I had to put the deposit down on the house, and it was like, right, okay, so I can only buy, let's say, £500,000 worth of property, but I'd make, I don't know, 6% on 400,000, 500,000, 450,000 a year.
This is a big one. So you figured out then, unlike most people, that you're going to make profit on the whole amount rather than just the amount you put in as a deposit.
Correct. Yeah, it's all about the total asset value. And so if I could make money on borrowing other people's money, that would make I'd be able to make a lot more money than I could on just investing my money. So the bank's money is my favourite money, of course, because it's the money you can get at the cheapest rate, or money a pleb like me could get at the cheapest rate. So I sat there and looked at it and I thought, right, okay, is there an angle? And I'd done this research and I'd worked out, and I had all the people in my factory floor, and I'd go around to them and said, when did you, Dad, because they all live locally, and I tested my house price calculator to when did your parents buy the house? Was it, they bought it in January? When did you actually move in? Oh, we didn't move in until June, right? Okay, so you paid for it in January, price in January. And I'd say, was the purchase price this? And they go, how the hell did you know that? And I'd been able to work out what people who'd owned houses for 20, 30, 40 years, what they paid for them. I went around, I did this, I had 20 different people in my factories. I thought, this is interesting. I can tell what house the price will be. And then I thought, hang on a minute, why don't I run it in reverse? Why don't I see what the house prices are going to be, or what they should be? And I did that, and I suddenly realised that the property market was at an undervalue to
it wasn't keeping up with what you projected it should be doing.
And I looked at it and went, there's at least a 30% lift due on properties in our area. I went and did all this research, and then I went and presented it at the boardroom, that sort of thing. We had our annual general meeting, and all the managers from the factories, our external auditors and our internal accountants, and my business partner and me were there. And at the end of the meeting, I said, yeah, I think that the property market is undervalued by 30% at least, and we should all stick as much money as we can into property. And of course, everyone more or less laughed at me. But fortunately, I'd done all my research in front of my wife, who was heavily pregnant with my daughter. She said, what did they all say? I said, they all laughed at me, thought I was nuts. And she says, oh, no, I think you're right. Go ahead, do it. Spend everything we've got. And so I did.
Not only had you worked out that it was undervalued in our area, but I was in the process of moving down from London, as were many, many other people, because London was going through a really bad crime wave. And just where my husband had grown up in London, and I loved living in London, but where we were in Kensal Rise, the next borough, or whatever it's called, up was Harlesden and Willesden, and there'd been 20 shootings in the previous year, and a child had been hit by a ricocheting bullet, and I said, that's it, I'm out of here. And so we moved down, as did many, many other people, to Brighton, and then our area, Worthing, got the donut effect. So there was a double whammy happening as well that you possibly did know about. Did you know that?
I didn't know that particular one, but I always assumed that people make money in one place and then they relocate to another place to get a better quality of life, better size property, whatever it was. And I knew that effect was going on, but I didn't know the exact reason why it was happening in London. But so anyway, I did it. Went away the next day. So after following my wife's advice, I went out that morning and I bought a load of properties, and I reckoned I'd made
Bought a
about
load of properties. What? Because
yeah,
you had a pot of money and you went and put deposits
yeah,
down on a
yeah, yeah.
few.
It was I estimated I'd made $250,000 that morning, and
Wow.
at the time my business partner and I were making about 300,000 a year, and I'd made $250,000 just on that. And I went back to the office and I showed him. I said, "Look, this is what I've made. I reckon I've made today." I said, "You've got one more chance. Do you want in on this or not?" And he went, "You're right. They're wrong. I'm in." Right. And that was it. We went.